Ahoy Patriots, welcome to the Knowledge Core of the Progressive Playbook. I'm glad you've chosen to continue this voyage with your humble dealer, past the Health Core where we talked about policies that promote a healthy status of individuals. In this section we'll be talking about policies that promote the individual's capacity for change, which of course is through knowledge and education. But before we dive into policies, let's assess the damage. As our current education system gets more competitive, it continues to put more pressure on kids to do well, to get into a good college so they don't fall behind in life. This affects their mental health. Some people go to college, a place that was supposed to be rich with diverse thinking and spreading of knowledge, but is increasingly becoming an echo chamber of its own. And then they go off to their white-collar jobs that further weaken their connection to the blue collar, the working class. This system has us value a narrow view of intelligence and success, and doesn't activate the vast majority of people to feel appreciated for their work. This breeds a growing resentment among the populace. You have the educated elites who look down on everyone else, while the less educated find the guy who gets under the elite's skin and vote him into power. As a result, our political polarization isn't really left versus right like we think it is, it's top versus bottom, the haves versus the have-nots. On the one side you get the smug, elitist politicians.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
I won the places that represent 2/3 of America's gross domestic product.
And on the other side, you get the charismatic bomb thrower.
Oh, I know, you're a tough guy, Jeb.
And we need to have a leader that is
real
principled.
tough.
You're never going to be president of the United States by insulting your way to the presidency.
Let's see, I'm at 42 and you're at 3, so far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter.
Who can rally a tribe so thoroughly, he can get his people to stage a coup to try to end democracy and the peaceful transition of power. Based on all of this, I'm going to lay out my 4 knowledge core beliefs for you right here, starting with one that might surprise you. I think meritocracy is overrated. Meritocracy is the idea that those who demonstrate hard work and ingenuity are the ones who get ahead. Seems like a good idea. A little bit of competition is great for bringing forth the best people for the job or the best ideas for the problem. Some might even call this the American dream. But what happens when you overprescribe a meritocratic system? In his book, The Tyranny of Merit, Michael Sandel talks about how our overly strong belief in meritocracy has led to meritocratic hubris. This great clip from RSA captures it perfectly.
Meritocratic hubris. This is the tendency of winners to inhale too deeply of their success, to forget the luck and good fortune that helped them on their way. It's the smug conviction of those who land on top that they deserve their fate, and, by implication, that those on the bottom deserve theirs too.
So when we encourage people, you can make it to the top if you try, we are putting the responsibility solely on the individual. This leads to fierce competition to get to the top, to get those high test scores and good grades, to get into the best schools out of fear of failing or falling behind in society. And as the wage gap between the college educated and the non-college educated people grows wider, there is increasingly more pressure to graduate from college. And people who make it to the top feel like they've earned it all on their own. After all, they went through so much stress, worked so hard. Meanwhile, they fail to recognize all the other factors that got them there, like good teachers, learning resources, parents who valued education, school funding. Whether consciously or not, the winners look down upon the rest as lazy or lesser than. Because the double-edged sword of meritocracy is, if you didn't make it to the top, that means you didn't try hard enough. It's all your fault.
And I really think these young people need to understand, work harder, do better, stop blaming others, blame yourself.
You can feel the scorn from the elites, which would cause you shame and resentment as well. I know all too well what rejection feels like, having the door slammed in your face for scholarships, school admissions, job opportunities, or made to feel worthless and incompetent by a micromanaging boss. Rejection teaches important life lessons, sure. I just believe it shouldn't teach you that it's all your fault, especially at a young age, because it's not true. And if you want to see what happens when we take our current competitive landscape to the extreme, take a look at the Asian countries. In Hong Kong, 2-year-olds are interviewing to get into the best preschools. On average, Korean students are sleeping 2 hours less than American students. And check out this student in China running a program on his computer while biking back from class. And all out of fear of failure, not just from the students, but from the parents who pass down their fears and pile on the pressure. The OECD's PISA rankings are the gold standard for evaluating education systems around the world. And based on overall test scores in math, science, and reading, the top 6 countries are all in Asia. But is it worth the cost to students' mental health, which is still seen as taboo in many of these countries? Plus, are math, science, and reading all we care about for our students? Because you can get those scores through rote learning and memorization, which is a common teaching style in Asian countries, but when it comes time to think about problems critically and independently, and solve problems creatively and with some risk-taking, people from these learning environments struggle. I've worked in biotech startups in Hong Kong and Singapore, and this is the general complaint I keep hearing. And this is why I'm more interested in the Finnish and Estonian systems, which are also rated as some of the best in the world, while de-emphasizing grades and encouraging creativity and fun. We're approaching a future where machines will be doing more of the hard labor for us, which forces us to prioritize creativity and to activate much more of our population, which leads me to my second belief, that most people can learn most things. One of my good friends and former roommates is a secondary school teacher who has taught in several places around the world, and you can tell when you talk with her that she's very passionate about teaching. So I was surprised when she said she thinks the purpose of our education system, as it's currently designed, is to weed people out. It's a sorting system along a single ladder. Here's an example. Let's say in math you get a 75%, so you mastered 3/4 of the material. 75% is still a passing grade, so you move on to the next level with all those gaps in knowledge. And what happens when you try to build concepts on top of those gaps in knowledge? You get more gaps in knowledge, until eventually the student says, gee, I guess I'm not a math person. In our current system, it seems like people are supposed to fall behind, so we can put different people in different boxes, different roles in society. But it's a shame that we have to disempower people to make this happen, and make them feel like they didn't try hard enough in the process, especially because there's no evidence they couldn't do it. Martial arts isn't taught this way. You don't move on to the next belt because it's time. You can only do it if you've mastered the skills of your current belt. And speaking of martial arts, I think there's a great lesson we can learn from Wing Chun, which is Bruce Lee's foundational martial art. Wing Chun was originally founded by a woman, and it was designed for smaller people to take down bigger opponents. It's not about more power. It's about efficiency and precision, so less is more. When we were learning Wing Chun, we were often taught to find the crack and expose the crack. Similarly, instead of more lecturing, more homework, more tutoring, more standardized testing, what if we just had more collaborative work environments that aim to fill the gaps in knowledge of all students? This is more of the philosophy of the Scandinavian countries. Again, over there, less is more, as teachers spend less time teaching and more time planning. Because everyone has gaps in knowledge, and it takes precision to find these cracks, and once you've exposed them, you can give a student the rush of that aha moment when something finally clicks. Knowledge is supposed to be empowering. We don't want people to be scared of learning, to be encumbered by self-doubt. So rather than someone saying, I'm not good at math, I'd love for the attitude to be, math is important and I can do it, I just prefer literature. And that's perfectly fine. One of the most empowering ideas I remember from my senior year of high school was this idea of multiple intelligences, that people have different preferred learning modalities, but that traditional school tends to focus on just 2 or 3 of them. This tells me that if we are to adapt to a fast-changing world, we'll want to emphasize not just one ladder, but multiple respectable ladders. This leads me to my third belief, that diverse knowledge is compounding. There is great value in deep knowledge, going further into the nuances of a specific field or discipline, but there are also large gains to be had when you can pull from many disciplines and learn how to integrate them. Here's what Tim Ferriss has to say about it.
If, say, you combine 2 skills that are valuable but even more rare and therefore more valuable together in many instances, like a computer science degree and a law degree, or extreme knowledge of finance and or mathematics plus public speaking, automatically you have a competitive advantage that allows you to more likely end up, say, in the top decile of earning power.
It's uplifting to think that we can find a great place for most people in society using a combination of their unique talents and interests. I scored well in the logic category of the multiple intelligences test. So does that mean I should only go up the science and math ladder and be in research forever? I could do that, as I have been for the last decade, but I also did pretty well in kinesthetic, intrapersonal, and interpersonal intelligence. So that's being able to know how your body works, self-reflect, and connect with other people. And these have also come up for me in the last decade in the form of teaching science communication to high school students or mentoring 36 researchers in the lab. And with these skills and interests, it seemed only natural for me to start this YouTube channel where we can dig into multiple topics. Notably, my weakest learning types were linguistic and musical. Does that mean I shouldn't learn a new language or pick up a new instrument? No, it just means I haven't exercised those types yet. I have a whole lifetime to get better at them, which brings me to my final belief that learning is lifelong. There are many lifelong learners out there, but culturally the conversation around life tends to be around 3 phases. First we learn, then we do, and then we retire. Now Republicans in Congress don't like that last phase. As part of their 2024 party platform, they want to keep people working by keeping minimum wage low, cutting Social Security, and raising the retirement age.
No one in the United States should be retiring at 65 years old. Frankly, I think retirement itself is a stupid idea unless you have some sort of health problem. Everybody that I know who is elderly, who has retired, is dead within 5 years.
Their argument is, what else are you going to do without purpose? But that's crazy. Who are they to tell you how to live the last remaining years of your life? That's why these ideas poll terribly with the American people, including a majority of Republican voters. Some people get joy and fulfillment from work, so they work past retirement, but the Knowledge Corps is all about giving people options, and if we as a society see learning as a source of lifelong joy and fulfillment, then people would want to spend their time learning new things, picking up new hobbies, using that to connect with the community. So there you go. In summary, I think some meritocracy is great, but too much of it leaves a lot of people behind and creates resentment. And to prepare for a quickly changing future, we have to activate our entire population to enrich themselves with diverse knowledge and skills, and to enjoy doing so throughout their lives. Taken together, I envision a world described by teachers and learners rather than producers and consumers. To become a culture that places high priority on education, we're going to see how we can tune up our current education pipeline, starting with pre-K. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out that one, and if you're trusting my voice, be sure to hit me with that LSB, like, subscribe, and bell, and I'll deal ya the next one.